I believe texture is an important element to fashion.
Because I'm wearing modest, neutral, solid colors for my Regency look,
I feel like texture is where you can really show off amidst just being the same color to avoid just looking like solid blocks of color or whites. I've noticed in movies, costume design usually includes a lot of texture or subtle patterns to add interest to a monochrome outfit. The texture I'm talking about today is the décolletage of a man, as it pertains to Regency clothing. The element of Regency décolletage that I have planned include all sorts of textures of folds, pleats, gathers, and pseudo-pin tucks. In my research, I found myself drawn to these finely pleated frills. And I was dying to create one since I rarely see barely even pictures of them. And from my experience of the labor involved, it seems these finely pleated frills maybe will last you a night or two, are saved for the utmost formal occasions, or for portraiture to remain in posterity. There are endless examples of these finely pleated linen frills in portraiture, but I have yet to see but one real example from the agreeable tyrant, as attached to a false shirt and collar combo. From my experiments, I am just winging it. I claim no historical accuracy with my methods. The elements I wanted to achieve with this frill was its sheerness, so I had to find a very, very light, very thin linen voile.
I started my experiment with a scrap piece of linen, hemmed it, and just folded it to see how it would react.
To figure this out, I started by looking up how large pleats for skirts are usually done and decided to go with a similar method. Basically, a pleating board made of cardboard. I started with about 3/8 of an inch with the board that I made. I found these pleats a little bit too thick for me personally, because I wanted them very fine and very cute. I ended up with an 1/8 or 3/16 of an inch, but I just wanted them really fine.
Once the sample was successful, I scored and folded my final mini pleating board. I wanted to find the finest, lightest, most transparent weight linen, so I actually found this website tied to history that has a linen voile.
I realized I actually should have had two sides of a pleating board, but I think that was too busy for such fine pleats, folding it against the table and hoping for the best. These starched folds were so delicate, you can barely touch them and they will react. Even my fingers are too chonky to deal with them, so I would kind of put them back on the board and I would have to refine them so gently. Pinching them here and there. And then had to hem up one side. I got this very lovely little thick linen thread from France. To attach the frill to the shirt or my future dickie, I did a rolled hem for the gathering edge. This linen rolls so nicely, especially once it's starched. I also had to make sure that each valley of the fold was where my needle was stitching, so it would match the fold. Okay, it's time to gather the pleats and see if it destroys them in the process. Okay. So I also wanted a pleated shirt. Usually the typical white shirt underneath is just kind of a gather, but I've noticed some portraits that have very nicely pleated chest pleats, and I wanted to make a dickie of sorts, or a chemisette, that would just tie around my neck and hang, as only the chest part of the quote-unquote shirt would be showing, so all I really needed was the dickie. Men and women both used chemisettes, which are basically just shirt pieces without sleeves, which I believe kind of just help any close-fitting suit look even cleaner without all of the sleeves hiding underneath for the purpose of proper draping. I wasn't in the mood to make another shirt, so the chemisette it was. So I made 2 panels of pleats and I attached a collar to it just like an extant example. So I realized the linen I got was a little bit too orangey, yellow leading white than a pure pristine blue white. So now I'm bleaching it because I can't handle having orangish whites and blue whites in one bosom piece. I like these pleats, and I hope I didn't ruin them by doing this, but I really wanted them the right color. So I went back to the fabric store and got more linen in the correct white shade. So I started over and
Marked the edges with 1/4-inch marks with my heat disappearing ink pens and
pleated 2 panels once again.
basically made knife pleats.
Because the panels were so wide, I had to kind of finger pleat the in-between sections. I used one of my pattern weights as a sort of creasing device.
Though I suppose I could have just ironed it.
This was probably a week before the ball, and I got tired of doing a lot of hand sewings, so then I just machined the pleats. There we go.